Now let's go to the North Carolina Republican Senator, by the way, a member of the Judiciary Committee, among other things, Sen.Tillis. Senator Tillis, good to have you, sir.
Good to be back, Neil.
How do you feel about this?
I think it makes sense. I agree with Chair Grassley in the segment before me that we need to if we want to reestablish confidence in the Department of Justice, the FBI. There were some questionable practices dating all the way back to the Clinton email scandal, and I think it all needs to be investigated to make sure people stayed within the rules and acted properly.
Couldn't the Inspector General do that, sir, or does he have a different, edict?
Well, I've requested specifically what the scope of the Inspector General investigation is. I think that they can run in parallel. I believe there will be different timelines and slightly different scope. But this is just going to give sunshine to the entire process, dating all the way back to Hillary Clinton, the creation of the dossier, and those events, which I think are important to take a look at.
Senator, your colleague, Senator Richard Burr, has wanted to hear from Donald Trump Jr., we are told, because of some discrepancies he just wanted to clear up. I asked him a couple of times voluntarily to come, and the word is that Donald Trump Jr. did not, and so he subpoenaed him, and it's caused a big ruckus, obviously, within your party, with Donald Trump Jr.'s dad, the president. How do you feel about that?
Well, I feel like if I were Donald Trump, I'd be worried about coming here before Congress with the spectacle that we have here. We've had the Democrats, after I joined some Republicans to make sure the special counsel could do his job. He did it. He found no collusion, and he found no obstruction. What some of the Democrats seem to be wanting to do is conflating an investigation that Senator Burr is pursuing with a complete report that found that the president was not guilty of collusion nor guilty of obstruction. They need to move on from that. But when you've got in the House a guy bringing a bucket of chicken and the spectacle that we're seeing over there treating these high-ranking officials, I could absolutely understand why Trump Jr. is not going to come before Congress.
But it was an Intelligence Committee under Republican control and a Republican chairman who was requesting his presence, right?
Well, that's something that the chair will have to work out with the Intelligence Committee, and an investigation that incidentally is on counterterrorism. It is not a re-prosecution of the special counsel investigation. What I want people to do here is take a look at the reality that investigation's over, and then I defer to my senior senator on whatever other actions he wants to take. But I do think that Donald Jr. is rightfully hesitant to come before this Congress because most of the behavior that I've seen on the other side of the aisle, not Senator Burr's, is purely politically motivated.
Do you know the reaction he got among fellow Republicans for pushing that? It clearly surprised the president.
Well, I think that we all found out about it at the same time, so I won't talk about how other members reacted. I just immediately went to the reality that I see Democrats on the Hill trying to reopen the special counsel investigation, and that's something that I think we should reject out of hand.
Real quickly, sir, the president is talking this trade war today and saying we're going to win, that tariffs have generated $100 billion to us, and so we're winning that. First of all, that $100 billion figure is substantially off, but having said that, do you worry that he is overly embracing tariffs?
No, I think at this point we have to give the president a lot of leeway. I've spent a lot of time researching China. They're stealing our intellectual property. They're actually a national security risk. They're a bad actor that we have, for the first time in decades, had a president who's willing to stand up to them because China knows what the president knows. If they get into a war, a trade war, they're going to lose.
All right, Senator, thank you for taking the time. Good seeing you again.
Democrats are sounding off about that New York Times report. Senate Armed Services Committee member Tim Kaine tweeting, "This is complete madness. Trump cancels a diplomatic deal with Iran against the advice of Secretary Tillerson, Secretary Mattis, European allies, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and now has drawn up plans to send 120,000 American troops into a new war in the Middle East." Brett Baer is anchor of Special Report. Gosh, I could see how a story like this grows all of these legs, and at the White House, then they try to tamp it down. What do you make of all of it, Brett?
Well, I think the tension is very high, and Jennifer just pointed that out. And the fact that the U.S. has moved military assets to the region, the fact that the USS Abraham Lincoln went through the Suez Canal on camera, the Navy sent out the video. You do that for a reason, and that is to send a message. Now, sometimes you send the message too well, and it looks like you're building up to a war. And obviously, the U.S. has plans for every contingency.
Right.
The Pentagon goes through everything. So, you know, you get a leaked story to the New York Times about 120,000 troops, and suddenly it's like President Trump wants to go to war.
Right. And you had actually Patrick Shanahan, the president's nominee to lead the Defense Department. He's in an acting capacity now as Defense Secretary. He had an interview with him over the weekend about this very thing. Watch.
How concerned are you about Iran? Iran in Iraq is an issue. Iran in Syria is an issue. Iran in Lebanon is an issue. Iran-supported groups in Gaza is an issue.
We also see them in terms of their cyber activity, maritime activity, ballistic missiles. So they're a significant threat.
And with the economic sanctions, do you think you might force them into an extreme behavior?
The pressure campaign, the maximum pressure campaign that Secretary Pompeo has been leading, Secretary Mnuchin, is having a significant effect on their economy.
The strange thing, too, Brett, about all of this is that some people act like the Iranians are not a threat at all. Let me read to you from Chris Murphy and Jim Himes, two congressional members, Democrats, in an op-ed today, saying the Ayatollahs of Tehran are in a category with the brutal regimes of Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi. But no matter how much Hussein and Gaddafi deserve to be removed from power, our military actions to take down those regimes ended up creating more misery than they prevented. The frustrating thing I would imagine for the United States Defense Department is that they have to plan for contingencies, and they do have intelligence that says that the Iranians are planning to attack our assets.
Right. And I think what the acting defense secretary talked about there, the maximum pressure, is having a real significant effect in Iran, to the fact that they are feeling the pinch so much that they're having to act out, at least publicly, and talk out about the U.S. actions and perhaps threaten these acts. If you can't say that Iran is a great player in the region, because you look at somebody like Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Revolutionary Guard, who has killed a lot of people, including U.S. troops, and he's also helped Hamas and Hezbollah and other terrorist groups. They've launched ballistic missiles. They are a threat in that region, but they have to be dealt with the right way, and the administration doesn't want to go to war over that.
Indeed. And let me just ask you about one other foreign policy point that Jennifer also reported on. That is Secretary of State Pompeo goes to meet Lavrov. This is the Russian foreign minister. They have a lot to talk about. And while, of course, America has said through the Trump administration they want better relations, but Russia certainly makes it hard to be their friend.
Right. I mean, every time you turn around, Russia is kind of doing the other thing that the U.S. wants them to do. In Venezuela, they're propping up Maduro instead of acknowledging Guaido. In Syria, they've been backing Bashar al-Assad from the beginning. And they're not, you know, a great in-step ally with the U.S. because they've attacked the U.S. And I think it was important that Secretary Pompeo put out first that he said you can't interfere in the elections next time. We'll see how strong that language may have been from the inside meeting readouts.
And we'll have a little bit more information later, and I'm sure you'll probably cover it on Special Report about the revelation today that the Russians were able to hack into 2 counties, though the governor of Florida saying they did not change any of the actual votes. That is certainly a significant development. Brett Baer, thank you. We'll watch you at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Attorney General William Barr has tapped U.S. Attorney John Durham, a corruption specialist, to look into the origins of the Russia probe. This as the AG has enlisted the help of the CIA. The president was asked about it a short time ago today.
I didn't know it, but I think it's a great thing that he did it. I saw it last night, and they want to look at how that whole hoax got started. It was the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the people of this country. And you know what? I am so proud of our Attorney General that he is looking into it. I think it's great. I did not know about it, no.
Power panel now. Chris Bedford, the editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller News Foundation. Haven't seen you in a minute. It's great to have you back on the program.
Great to see you, Harris.
Judy Miller, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and author and Fox News contributor. So, Chris, I'm going to start with you. Knowing the beginnings of things, it's what the president has asked about. He said he didn't direct this particular event, but he's happy about it.
I think it's a good move, too. A lot has been discussed about what's actually a threat to our democratic process in the last 2 years. And I think that the question of how secret warrants were actually obtained with the FISA courts, or why the FBI was putting people, or excuse me, our intelligence services were putting spies on political operatives in foreign countries are far more important to the integrity of our elections and if things were done correctly than maybe fake memes or Russian troll farms. This is a real issue, and it's gone on in the United States for years. There's been surveillance overreach by our intelligence services since at least Lyndon B. Johnson surveilling his opponent, but it's dangerous and ought to be looked at, and it sounds like this might be the right man to do it.
So, Judy, before I come to you, Democrat Senator Bob Menendez has gone after Barr's decision to tap this prosecutor for the origins of the Russia probe. Watch.
What is alarming about this is that the Justice Department and the Attorney General, who is supposed to be the attorney for the American people, not for the president, seems to be used by the president at his own attack force. And it is a chilling set of actions that ultimately I would see in Hungary with Viktor Orban, not that I would see in the United States of America.
Is that spitting the facts? I mean, you're one of the best investigative reporters on the planet. I don't overstate it.
Thank you, Harris. But look, this is going to be the third investigation of this issue, or the fourth if you count the Mueller report, which concluded that the spying, as the Attorney General called it, on the Republican campaign, Donald Trump's campaign, was based on, quote, legitimate factors. That was his finding. How many times are we going to investigate this? That being said, I think since the, quote, fake news, phony investigation, hoax, witch hunt has become a Republican talking point, it is incumbent upon the Attorney General to settle this issue once and for all if he can. I'm not sure he can because we have other reports. We have Michael Horowitz's in-house report coming out in June, but that is only of what the Department of Justice did, not what the CIA did and what the other
He
agencies
doesn't adjudicate
did.
anything.
Exactly.
Chris, so we're listening to how many times do we need to investigate the FISA situation, that secret court, and using an anti-Trump dossier put together in part by a British spy. I mean, every political party in America should do what with that?
Well, it took the Daily Caller News Foundation, not public admittance from the government, to uncover that Stephen Halper was working with the U.S. government to surveil political operatives for Trump. Just in the last 2 weeks, the New York Times was able to uncover that an actual U.S. intelligence asset posed as his assistant and possibly set up a honey trap for one of Trump's political associates. So we're learning new things all the time here. And the good thing about this Attorney General is that he has uncovered corruption in the FBI in my hometown of Boston. He's investigated corruption, or not corruption, but overreach of power during times of war
Leaks,
by the CIA.
in particular.
Yeah, and here in Washington, D.C., he's worked for President Bush, he's worked for President Obama, he's worked for President Clinton, and so far he doesn't seem to be a very partisan person, and hopefully Judy's right, he can put this to bed and there is no serious issue, but if there is, it should be uncovered.
And I caught that, Judy, so benign the way he put that honey trap that we learned about recently. Last word from you.
Look, I think that in general it would be terrible if, in fact, there were no basis for the quote, spying or the surveillance of a presidential candidate. But so far, Mueller seems to have concluded the opposite.
All right.
If this helps put this to bed, okay. But let's stop already at some point.
Great to see you both.